Mike, Notre Dame right now in their class of 2023 has one of the most exciting, dare I say, non-quarterbacks in the class, an edge rusher, Keon Keeley from Tampa, Florida. You've talked about this for a good amount of time now, that he's been looking, he's been listening. He went to Tuscaloosa recently, and I know one of your articles on Blue and Gold Illustrated this week, it didn't sound very promising that Keeley was going to stay in Notre Dame's class. Where do things stand right now?
So right now is kind of the key point in that question, Darren, because it depends on when your radio audience or those listening back on podcast or the Blue and Gold YouTube audience, it really depends on when you're listening to this. I can tell you that as we record this, what is today? All the days are running together. Wednesday, Keeley is still a public member of the class, if you will, but it really does seem like it's trending towards him decommitting from the Fighting Irish. Darren, I had a source close to this recruitment with a lot of knowledge of it just maybe 3 weeks ago say, I would be shocked if Keeley were to decommit and end up anywhere else than Notre Dame. And that's exactly what it seems going to happen. So, it's kind of one of the, it's, dare I say, a good problem to have. Would you rather not be in the mix for these 5-star recruits, or shop down this aisle? Sorry, I know it's probably not a term Notre Dame fans like to hear, but it's you're seeing a progression, for the lack of a better term, for Notre Dame recruiting right now. They're going after more high profile players. And they had this young man committed for over a year. He's the first commit of the class. They identified him very early in the process. And, Alabama's a pretty tough program to turn down right now. And I would project him to end up with the Crimson Tide. So I don't know what else Notre Dame really could have done here. They got him committed and hosted him on campus several times. Darren just... It doesn't look like it's working out.
So it is safe to say, for Irish fans listening to this, Notre Dame didn't do anything wrong. This is just a young man looking at his options. And as you mentioned, Alabama has a lot to offer. Some of their things are different than Notre Dame. Both schools have great opportunities for young men and young ladies to continue their athletic careers. But as you said, Alabama is the elite program in college football as of right now. And hey, Nick Saban is Nick Saban.
If I'm a Notre Dame coach, when this is all over, again, assuming that the expected happens here and he does decommit, I'm sure those coaches are gonna be like, man, if we would have done this a couple weeks ago, or we should have handled this a bit differently. I'm sure those thoughts will cross their mind. But just being fair, I don't know what different they could have done here. And for those being like, oh, it's just an NIL thing. Look, I don't have any comments on that. But my general thoughts on Notre Dame and NIL in terms of recruiting is that it's just not a good thing for Notre Dame, Darren. Notre Dame's just not going to do what some of these other programs are doing, like Texas A&M. And again, is that the case with Keeley? I don't have that kind of information, nor do I really want to know. But I just don't think it's a good thing for the Irish.
Mike, is it fair to say Notre Dame offered a 2023 edge rusher this week? It's not a coincidence.
Yeah, they offered a young man out in California by the name of Jaden Moore. Notre Dame just needs to stop recruiting kids with the last name Moore. Let's just be honest. They've gone, over here recently. But in all seriousness, and again, this is kind of another one of the record situations. He's expected to announce his commitment on Wednesday, and it looks like Oregon's the favorite. So Notre Dame offered Monday, commitment comes Wednesday, and this isn't Notre Dame offered and now he's committing, so it must be Notre Dame. No, his commitment date was locked in before the Irish offered. He's never been to campus, but I would expect that Notre Dame will continue to recruit him after he commits to a school on Wednesday. And again, I don't think the Irish will have a hat on the table, but they did offer Caleb Herring from Tennessee and Blake Purchase out in Colorado. So they already offered those guys at the end of July. So Notre Dame's definitely looking at other defensive end options.
He is Mike Singer, Notre Dame football recruiting insider, Blue and Gold Illustrated, blueandgold.com. Let's stick with the 23 class. Another high-profile player, Peyton Bowen, another young man that has been looking at other programs. I think a lot of Irish fans are nervous about whether he's going to stick with Notre Dame. And I'm looking at your on-3 projection board. It seems like Notre Dame's number has gone down just a little bit the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, that RPM, the recruiting prediction machine at On3. Oklahoma and Texas A&M have picked up some percentage points. Notre Dame still the leader at 61%, but I think that's probably pretty darn accurate for just being an algorithm. I mean, I would probably say, someone asked me my projections on where Notre Dame is at, I'd probably say about 60 to 70% chance that Notre Dame is going to land Peyton Bowen. I don't really like doing percentage chances, though, because who the heck knows? It's recruiting. But I feel better about Notre Dame keeping Bowen than I do for Keeley, for sure. That's not saying a whole lot right now, but I do feel like the Irish are in a pretty good spot. The thing with both Keeley and Bowen was, they both visited these SEC schools, other powerhouse programs at the end of July. The thing was just get through it. Just get through it unscathed, get to the season, let them focus on their senior seasons, get them back to campus for a game day experience in the fall and just kind of weather the storm. It's a couple weeks, 3 weeks since the Keeley's Bama visit, and that one's not looking good. Bowen, that seems to be the case. Things seem to have settled down there. I'm sure OU and A&M reporters still feel like, that Bowen's going to end up flipping. But from what I'm told, things are looking good for the Irish here. Still going to be a battle. It's still a who the heck knows. But as of today, Notre Dame is, still very much has a hold of this 5-star player.
Okay, so there's some good news for you. Let's now focus on.
We'll see.
Let's focus on the start of high school football. All these guys we've been talking about, they're now preparing for their high school seasons. Let's get into some Irish commitments and some guys that we should really watch out for during this high school football season.
Oh, I've got 8 right off the bat, and I'm going to write this article at blueandgold.com as well, in the coming few days, because I think this is important. Like, there's a lot of, like, in Notre Dame recruiting, all of us recruitniks who are crazy enough to follow this stuff on a daily basis, we often forget about the committed players. It's either we talk about the targets or the players who might be flipping from Notre Dame. So there's a guy like Brennan Vernon, defensive lineman from Mentor, Ohio, who's Notre Dame's second commit in the class. He committed a day after Keeley, so maybe soon enough he'll be the first commit. We'll see. But he's someone who just kind of doesn't get talked about. He's just, he's not going to camps. He doesn't really do interviews. He's just kind of fallen down in the rankings a little bit. Doesn't have junior tape out there. But I'm very intrigued with what Brennan Vernon's senior season will look like. I mean, when I saw him play last fall, he's probably around 270 pounds. I think now he's closer to 300 pounds or 290-ish. He's a big dude. So he's transitioned to being like a 5 or 3 technique into being a nose tackle or a 3 tech. Like, he is definitely projecting more to an interior player. So I want to see what Brennan Vernon looks like this fall. Braylon James is another guy who is very, very talented, tests very well, but this 4-star receiver from the Austin, Texas area didn't play for a great high school team last season, so I think that hurt his production a good bit. He transferred to Stony Point in Round Rock, Texas, so Braylon James is definitely someone to keep an eye on. Micah Bell, a 5'11", 170-pound cornerback from the Houston area. On3 has him ranked as a 3-star. Some of the other sites have him ranked as a big-time 4-star player. like, what does his cornerback progression look like? He's more of a running back at the high school level. You don't see a ton of him at corner and on his high school highlight tapes. I'm really intrigued to see, what he looks like as a defender, as a senior. Boubacar Traore, kind of like Brendan Vernon, we don't talk about him a ton. On three is him ranked as a top 100 player. Want to see, more of him this fall. Jaden Osberry is a guy who's, early on in the cycle, we thought this linebacker might be, a 5-star caliber player. He's only 6 foot, 202 pounds, so he's not the biggest inside backer. But looking forward to seeing what kind of output he has as a senior. I think he had a good summer camp circuit in the spring, but leading that a very good defense, University Lab in Baton Rouge. Jaden Osberry, a guy I think has the potential to shoot up the rankings. Just bear with me, guys. A couple more. Ben Minnick, a 3-star safety from Cincinnati, Lakota West, committed to Notre Dame in early August. One of those, 3-star guys who I think has potential to rise up the rankings. So who'll be a big one to keep an eye on? And then, this one's kind of obvious. Just CJ Carr, just a quarterback. I'm going to go see him play here in a couple weeks. I'm super stoked about my trip to Detroit to see him in action. He when I've seen him in person, he just looks so smooth. What is it like in person under the lights when guys are flying at you? I'm looking forward to that.